Yeah? Okay. I think we're ready to start. Still got some chairs coming in. Everybody ready? Excellent. Welcome. What a jam-packed room. I hope we don't have a fire. That's going to be bad. I am Elspeth Kirkman. I'm the Chief Programmes Officer here at Nesta, and I should apologise because I can't sit in these chairs without doing like a little excited swivel, so that's going to be happening throughout. We're already a little bit late starting this, so I'll just keep my remarks very short, but I'm going to be your chair. One of the main things I wanted to say to start off with is a massive thank you, because the work we're talking about today is a product of so many of you all in the room's amazing contributions to early years outcomes in the early years sector. So it's really lovely to have this kind of moment to celebrate together and to see you all here. I'll give you a very brief run through of what we're going to be doing, just so that you have the order in your head. The main thing is that the drinks will be served at 5, so all of you that came for those, that's how long you're going to listen to us talk. I'm going to hand over to Sarah Blackwood at our partner organisation, the Ethos Foundation, in a second. And then after Sarah, we're going to hear about some of the lived experience work that we did as part of this research report that we're launching and sharing today. Then my excellent colleague Lucy is going to be giving a presentation about that research. We'll maybe get a little bit of the inside scoop of all the stuff that didn't make it into the report. That, or she'll keep it professional, I'm not sure. Then we've got a panel, a really good panel presentations, and that's when you get to do Q&A. I always think, particularly at the end of the day, like, ask some spicy questions. It's really boring if they're dull. So give us some good questions. There'll be mics in the room, and you'll also be able to ask them online. And then we'll do a little bit of a wrap-up and those drinks. So without further ado, Sarah.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief as well. My name is Sarah. I'm Foundation Director of a family foundation called Ethos Foundation, and we were a partner around this programme of work. I'm really pleased to be so, as it felt really aligned to Ethos's vision and mission. So we were set up in 2017 with a vision for every child to access the things they need to thrive. And I guess with an organisational belief that there's so many assets. Sorry, am I echoing? Am I okay? Yeah, okay. We've got an organisational belief that there's so many assets, diverse assets and energy that already exist and have so much potential, and/or have so much potential to support children, especially in early childhood. And what we're really interested in as an organisation is what works to create collective impact at scale. So all those assets, how do we make them more than the sum of their parts? And so very happy and pleased to be able to partner with Nesta around a report that is asking kind of that question, both in sort of the end goal, like what does government need to do to support integration around early years, but also in its methodology to really get to the answer to that question by speaking to such a diverse range of experts. So really pleased to partner. So we at Ethos have worked for the past few years as a supporter and partner of an organisation called Thrive at 5, who is one example of trying to do that in practice. And so much learning, I think, from the stuff that's already going on. So I guess reflecting on this report in the context of the government's strategy last week is really interesting. And I guess my main reflection is it feels like, thanks to lots of hard-won efforts, blood, sweat and tears from many in this room, that we're kind of reaching a consensus around the why, and now we really need to mobilise around the how. So the why, the sort of the call to action about how much early childhood matters, not just for children themselves, crucially, but for our economy, for our society, that felt sort of matched by a strategy around early years, with some targets that the government's going to be holding itself accountable to. I think there's also feels like there's some consensus around the principles of the how. Some very positive that many of the themes that came out of the New Era work are sort of we can see a lot of them in the government strategy around, okay, integrate. Yeah, of course you need to bring things together. To people are not separate services. They want a load of things to support them. Parents themselves are one of the assets to support children. There's so many models, Sure Start, not the least of them, that we have to build on. So it feels consensus around those principles. And how do we create governance, operational infrastructure to actually allow a common agenda, reinforcing activity, shared measurement, shared communication to achieve that. And also we're not even starting from scratch in that. So many examples across the country of those operational piece of infrastructure in practice. So it feels like now the call to action, both on government and us, is to mobilise collectively, I guess not just across government, which certainly needs join up, but beyond government as well. And I thought that really came out of some of the insights of the report and of the government strategy as well. So I'm really excited about what comes next and contributing as one of many towards that collective effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you to Ethos as well for your support and partnership on this. I'm going to ask you to exit stage, whatever. There's going to be quite a bit of this. It'll hopefully be comedic and not terrible. So now we're going to move on to talking about the lived experience research that we did. And I'm really pleased that we're joined by, we're joined in person by one of our research participants and virtually by another. So I'd like to invite Afia to come up onto the stage. Afia, as I said, is one of our lovely research participants and a mum who's going to talk to us a bit about her experience and, if you just sit there, her experience and hopes, I guess, for an integrated family support system. Do you want to take that?
Okay, so hi everyone. My name's Afia. I'm a mum of two boys, two energetic boys. One is a 2.5-year-old and one is only 7 months old. So my experiences with family services has been quite positive, actually. So I'm from the Lewisham Borough. And for both boys, it's been a great experience. I've liked the fact that I think it's AQA, maybe the acronym is wrong, but they give you like from birth, they see you at your home, and then they come and see you again about 2 months old. And what I like about it is that they follow you along the journey right up until 2.5. Obviously, I've got family, I've got support, but it is nice to have the other, like, helping hand that's more professional, more streamlined. Because even though I can go to family, it's just that sometimes, especially my family, they'll just say stuff from their experience, that what they did or what their parents did. But sometimes...
It's not just your family.
Yeah, sometimes I would just like to know, like, more professional advice instead of having to go to Google or whatever, but to just talk to someone who knows better. Because that's just their profession. So I've had a good experience. My first son was a difficult experience just because he was my first. So I didn't know what I was doing. But with the second one, it's more streamlined. It was more, and I liked the fact that, they just followed me through the journey from 2 years old, well, not from 2 years old, from birth, right up until when my son is now 2.5. And now I'm doing it again with my second son. So, I've had a positive experience. I've enjoyed this whole journey. I've liked the fact that I've been heard, and then other mothers that I joined with in Lewisham Library. And just what we've experienced is a varied experience, like not one experience is the same. And it was nice to hear that for my sons, it was very positive. And it really does give me hope, like if I was to have another child, not anytime soon, that, I'm not on my own. Like there's other people that have been through it, and even if they haven't been through it, they're happy to help me through it.
That's great, thank you. And I'm glad your experience was so good. We are going to hand over, I think, I'm not in control of the tech, but I believe we're going to go to a video now of another mum, Sam, and then that's going to take us into a video about the lived experience research. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, so my name's Sam. My daughter is Alari. My family consists of me, my little girl, and my partner. Also my mum as well. We're like a good close fit unit. Um, in regards to my journey, it's not been easy. One experience I could probably reflect on is when I got to my lowest point in my postpartum depression. And it was the nurse that came for the health visit for her 1 year checkup that really helped introduce me to the hubs and stuff and the things that are really available for people that really do need it. And I think this needs to be ready available and a lot more sooner. I'm hoping that this video will reach a mum that needs help the same way as I did, and I'm hoping it'll be able to help her in her journey and to help her reach out and to know that she's not on her own. Yeah, so we're now going to play you a short film. Nesta partnered with our On the Radar to digitally tell 3 stories of the mothers they had spoken to, and I was one of those mothers.
I've waited to be a mum for so long. I've got a beautiful baby in front of me. This is my life now. I have to make this work. This has to work.
I am nursing one baby and holding another one in my womb. I am getting anxious about what will happen.
I just felt like I wasn't being listened to. It was sort of like, he's your child, you've got to deal with him.
I loved being pregnant. I wanted to be pregnant forever. But after the birth, I felt very disassociated. I didn't feel this instant gush of love for her. Some people are okay, others aren't. I was one of those people that I wasn't okay. Things started to become apparent that this isn't just what they call baby blues. This is something that needs to be addressed and is important. After about 3 months onwards, I felt lost. I just didn't know what to do. I felt like I was at breaking point. That was the point where I hit rock bottom. I think it was the sleep deprivation. I didn't know how I was going to cope the next night with no sleep. It literally felt like torture. I felt like I was in one of them films where, like, the prisoners, they lock them in a cell and then they wake them up every hour or whatever by turning the light on or chucking a bucket of water over him. That is exactly how I felt. Hallucinations were definitely there. One night I thought I had her in my arms and I didn't. And I was like, I can't feel like this forever. This cannot continue. I knew I had to change something. She sat down and she looked at me and she went to me, "You're not okay, are you?" And I went, "No, I'm not." She just said to me, "It's okay." And I felt a massive relief. She said, "Look, I've been here 2 minutes and I can see she's ticked off most of the milestones. Let's concentrate on you. What's going on? Have you done anything? Have you seen the doctor? Do you need me to refer you anywhere?" She gave me a referral for IAPT, which is basically counselling. She was checking up on me every week or so just to make sure everything was okay. The more that she kept checking up on me, the better things were getting. The health visitor put me in touch with the hub, which I actually didn't know was there. You can go and take her to get weighed, you can go for a coffee. There's other mums there, they do stay and plays. Talking to other mums and knowing what their story is and knowing that what you're going through is normal was what I needed at that time. After the birth, you get signed off from midwives straight away. For me, I probably could have done with like a checkup 3-4 months in. If I'd have had that help sooner, I could have maybe broke out of that box a lot sooner. I literally think you should get sent home with like a pack when you get discharged from the hospital and just be like, right, this is where your local hub is, this is where she can get weighed, this is what you need to do. You know, it is hard, and I think when you haven't got someone to help you navigate your way through that, it's very difficult.
I am in a new country, far from my country. I had my 2-year-old toddler. I am also expecting my second baby. I am all alone here. No friends, no family around. If you have people around you, you don't feel the burden, you don't feel the pressure, you don't feel the stress. When you are staying alone, it makes a depression in you. What to do? It's a life, remaining in a room. I mostly stay at home, doing the household activities. It's like that the clock is not running. It's just stuck in one place. My daughter, she doesn't like to stay at home day long. You know, sometimes she bring my outside shoes and tell me, Mama, come. She wants to go outside. She can't mix with babies around her. So she's remain all alone. So I think it is delay in his speech. I already talked with my GP. They concerned me about to put her in a daycare. I can't afford the daycare at all. It is beyond my thinking. When I was feeling depressed, my health visitor told me to take my daughter at a children's center. That children's center was free of cost, and they helped me a lot. They were providing me some essential things, but that children's center is quite distanced. Some weeks I can't go to my daughter's children's center because of the bus fare. I can just console myself by saying that, okay, I have been here only 5 months. Maybe gradually I will make friends. I will be in a good community here.
I first started realising like there was something not quite right when he was about a year old. It was quite delayed in most of his milestones. I expressed my concerns to the paediatrician. She thought, here we go, another parent that wants to sort of label the child. I just felt like I wasn't being listened to. I did question myself a lot. Like, what if I am wrong? What if I am labelling my son? And what if everyone's right? He was about a year and a half old, 2 years old. It was a whirlwind. He started destroying things, taking wheels off of cars, eating the wheels. If I decorated his bedroom, he'd rip all the wallpaper off. He tore a mattress up. He tore his pillow up. Then he started with the smearing. He basically just took his nappy off and the faeces of bit on his walls, on his bed, on his mattress, on his face, on his hands, his body. It was up to 5 to 10 times a night. We didn't know what was quite wrong, why he was doing these strange things. So I was thinking, what am I gonna do? They turned around and said, unfortunately, the wait time is looking at 15 years. He would have been 21 by the time he got a diagnosis. And I just thought, if I don't do anything now, I feel like I've failed him. So that's when I did pay private. Yeah, he's autistic. Yeah, he's ADHD. This is why he's doing this. For me, I haven't seen any support groups like that talk about children with additional needs. When there wasn't a diagnosis for him, and he was just the naughty child. Now he does have a diagnosis, they are able to apply for funding and put more things in place for him. The whole world seems a different place. We're a lot happier as a family.
Deliberately didn't watch that before watching it just now, and I kind of wish I had, because it's it's quite powerful. I'm going to invite Lucy onto the stage now, who's going to talk about the research that has gone into this report. I should have said earlier, if you downloaded the report yesterday, download it again, because we accidentally forgot to put one section in it. So there's a special little bonus section now.
Thanks, Elspeth, and hi everyone. Thank you all for being here. I was MC at the weekend, so I'm hoping to not mix up any of my notes. As I'm sure all of you know, last week the government committed to reviving family services across England through the expansion of its Family Hub programme to every local authority. And this is a really welcome signal of a new era of commitment to integrated family support and to improving the outcomes of young children, and create an opportunity to respond to years of dysfunction. 1 in 3 parents say they're unable to get the support they need. That's over 1 million families reporting they struggle to access professional support in the early years. And over 20% of toddlers are missing their 2 to 2.5 year checks. These gaps are widest in the most deprived areas, so services aren't reaching those who need them most. We also know that fewer than 1/5 of local authorities meet the minimum requirements for safe and effective delivery of the Healthy Child programme. And the health visitor workforce alone has shrunk by over 30% since 2015. And only 16% of local authorities meet the minimum ratio of health visitors to children. So even when we are accessing services, they're not sufficient. Early years services are delivered by different departments and agencies with separate funding streams, priorities and referral pathways. Health visiting, midwifery, early education and family support are siloed, even though we know that families benefit most when these services are joined together. And lastly, since 2010, more than £2 billion has been cut from preventative services. And despite robust evidence of the effectiveness, over 1,300 Sure Start centres have closed. So investment has shifted away from early support and prevention. So what's the result of all of this? Teachers are increasingly reporting that children are less likely to start school ready to learn. Some children aren't toilet trained, others don't have the communication skills they need. But the good news is that we have better evidence than ever on what it takes to help children fulfill their potential. And we can use the exercise of rebuilding family support to make sure this evidence is built into and approved upon by the system. So today we're launching the report, which summarises comprehensive work undertaken over the last 10 months to examine 3 sources of evidence: written evidence, the sector and families, about what works in integrated family services. So a little bit about the methodology. By triangulating the 3 evidence sources, we're able to identify the hallmarks of a highly functioning integrated early years system, revealing a series of system requirements. So those 3 sources of evidence, or 3 perspectives. So firstly, what the written evidence says. So essentially, we looked at over 100 papers from the Gray and academic literature, and we also received 44 responses from an open call that Nesta put out last autumn. And the sector, or experts by profession. For this, we ran some focus groups, interviews, and a Delphi survey, which many of you in the room participated in, which we're really grateful for. So the Delphi survey essentially was an online survey with over 80 participants, and then a second round of over 50 participants in deliberative workshops. And we tried to go far and wide in the sector, so we spoke to local government, health, education, academics, funders, voluntary sector, and more. And lastly, families, experts by experience. We ran a series of ethnographic interviews with 30 families across England in 3 localities, Northumberland, Lewisham and Leeds, and a series of co-design workshops with a number of the same families and some others. We basically did these, of course, to understand their lived experience of the early years system. In this work, we explore the level of consensus between these 3 different perspectives on different principles and system requirements for integrated family support. So how did we define consensus? So high consensus essentially is a clear alignment across all 3 strands of evidence around these principles. Medium consensus means the core principles were still in alignment. There weren't direct contradictions, but there may have been a lack of strong alignment in some of the specifics or details, and that might be a bit clearer when we go through some of them. And low consensus, where there are conflicting views or priorities between some of the perspectives. And I'm happy to say there was none of that in the research that we did. So we identified 8 system requirements for the system through this deliberation process. The overarching, there was medium to high consensus between the different sources of evidence. I'm going to spend most of this time going through each of these system requirements, but given the amount of time I've got, it'll be pretty brief. So see the report for more details or make use of the Q&A later. Firstly, the vision. All 3 strands of evidence, written, families and professionals, highlighted the negative impact of fragmented delivery in the absence of a long-term vision and shared goals for early support. So it's clear that a long-term vision is needed, but what should that vision actually involve? Firstly, a focus on the early years. 62% of the sector voted for at least half of funding to be from pregnancy to age 5. But this must come with no cliff edges, so we need strong early years support embedded within a wider, joined-up offer across the full age range. Secondly, proportionate universalism, backed by 88% of the sector. Integrated family support is needed in all local authorities, but it should be focused in most deprived neighbourhoods. There must be a universal baseline offer that's enshrined in typical access points, so that's health visitors, midwives, and increasingly early education, as well as offering additional targeted support for those who need it. And lastly, some things need to be fixed centrally, and others need to be flexed locally. Sector experts asked for central decisions on child and family outcomes measured across the system, and a menu of evidence-based programmes to choose from, but importantly, with discretion on how to implement them locally. So, what services actually need to be offered and how should they be delivered? That brings me to requirement 2. Again, all 3 strands of evidence agreed on the need of the main services that should be offered for children aged 5 and under. Sector experts and families strongly advocated for integrated health and early education services, those being voted as the 2 most important services to be integrated. They also emphasised the importance of co-locating support for mental health, parenting and finance. While the benefits of physical one-stop shops was clear for providing easy, accessible support and fostering relationships, there was slightly less consensus on the role of digital support. Although digital options offer convenience and can be cost-saving, many families prefer human interaction for complex issues, highlighting the need of a blended approach between the 2. So moving on to the next requirement, how do you measure, manage and improve performance throughout the system? So the written evidence and the experts we spoke to strongly believed in a single outcome framework as a structured way to plan, measure and evaluate family support intervention. Already, outcomes for children have been established at a central level. We know that there's the mission goal of 75% reaching a good level of development. This, of course, has its merits, but alternatives such as a continuous outcome, i.e. a score rather than just a pass or fail, would make it easier to identify which aspects of development are being missed or where different programmes or interventions are working well. And there's a need for wider system outcomes too to be monitored. We found the support for the Common Outcomes for Children and Young People framework that's already been co-developed and done a considerable amount of work to set outcomes for children and young people. Moving on to the fourth principle, the published literature and responses to our open call agree that clear governance arrangements involving representatives from all participating organisations alongside clear lines of accountability are central to effective family support systems. The current system is hindered by fragmented governance and leadership at both central and local levels, making early years services vulnerable to shifting political priorities. Historical successes like Sure Start demonstrated the benefits of cross-government collaboration, shared accountability between departments. Shared accountability mechanisms, potentially through statutory legislation or peer-led approaches, could ensure long-term investment and quality. So experts advocate for a partnership model where central government provide direction but allow local areas flexibility in delivery. However, you'll see a medium here. That's because despite agreement on the problem and the hallmarks of a solution, there's no single-led solution to emerge yet for this. Next, innovation. Given we still have some gaps in our knowledge on how to get the best outcomes in the earliest years of life, we need to make sure there's continuous learning and innovation embedded into the system to ensure new insights can be benefited from at scale. While there's strong evidence for effectiveness of many services and programmes, there's still significant gaps in understanding how specific elements interact or how to best engage disadvantaged families or integrate different agencies such as early education into the wider system. So to address this, this report emphasises the importance of local experimentation and autonomy, allowing areas to test, learn and grow new approaches co-designed with families. There's growing evidence to support blended finance as a way to test system-level innovation as well. Crucially, successful innovation needs to be scaled and disseminated more effectively. So the government needs to play a role in facilitating peer learning and sharing best practices through national networks and guidance, empowering local authorities to adapt strategies to their unique community needs. Requirement 6, very unsurprisingly, data. This is a very strong agreement that the current data infrastructure isn't working at its best. Findings from across all 3 strands of evidence suggest fixes need to focus on improving safe data sharing between agencies and making sure the available data is able to provide a clear and usable picture of service users. Currently, a fragmented technological landscape hinders effective data sharing and the creation of a single view of a child across different agencies. Local authorities exhibit really varying levels of data infrastructure, some still relying on manual data entry and existing commercial IT systems often lacking interoperability. To address this, there's strong support for central governed data rules, including the use of unique identifiers like the NHS number, and the development of common data standards. Experts advocate for mandatory data sharing between agencies such as NHS and local authorities. We found that 77% of the sector voted for data collection, sharing and use to be governed centrally. Alongside better data, there's recognised need for investment in workforce data skills so that practitioners can effectively utilise and interpret data, as well as to understand data sharing risks. This is something that came out when we spoke to families. They definitely appreciate the convenience of not having to repeat their story, but do prioritise data privacy and express concerns about sensitive information being shared or potentially used punitively. So the next requirement is workforce. The evidence all pointed towards a need for staff who can play connecting roles, championing the family across the system. We also derived useful insights into what skills need to be strengthened across the workforce, as well as the negative effects of the current workforce crisis. These connector roles, like family navigators or parent champions, improve access to and uptake of family services, especially for underserved groups. These roles provide a single, trusted point of contact, helping families navigate complex systems and allowing communication and referrals between services such as the hubs and early education. However, the availability and scope of these roles vary, and the expansion must consider the existing workforce crisis in critical areas such as health visitors. Beyond staffing numbers, there's significant need to address skills gaps, particularly in effective leadership that champions integrated services, drives a shared vision, and uses evidence for improvement. Training is also crucial for frontline practitioners in areas like digital literacy and multi-agency working. And lastly, again, perhaps unsurprisingly, underpinning a lot of this, requirement 8 is funding. Both the findings from the written evidence and the sector suggest that short funding cycles can limit the effectiveness of integrated family services. There was also high support for more flexible funding. So short-term fragmented funding hinders investment in crucial areas such as digital tools, shared roles, or workforce development. Programmes with longer funding cycles, such as Sure Start or more recently Better Start, have demonstrated their ability to drive systemic change, unlike the current Family Hub programme's smaller, time-limited streams. Also, the existing model, with its separate service-specific funding pot, often reinforces that silo delivery that we would like to move against. Experts strongly advocate for more flexible pooled or block funding arrangements to encourage shared decision-making, improve efficiency, and foster collaboration. They emphasise that unpredictable funding cycles can also erode trust with families and ultimately harm service effectiveness. So, taken together, these 8 requirements suggest what the foundational components of a strong integrated family service system, grounded in evidence and backed by the sector professionals and families, should be. So, these system requirements allow us to infer a set of policy implications that we will present here very briefly through a high-level blueprint for delivering integrated family support for the early years. So the 10 components I'm about to show very closely map with the 8 requirements I've just shown, as they're essentially 2 sides of the same coin. We've just outlined where problems lie and requirements as solutions, and here are the components that would need to be in place to make this all happen. So, we need a long-term vision with a corresponding funding commitment of at least 10 years to fund an early years core offer that is delivered by a one-stop shop, which is broader than family hubs. It could also be children's centres. Essentially, it should all sit under this blueprint. Essentially, it's just meaning that there's the right place at the right time for children and their families, as well as a digital offer. This offer has smart targeting and locally tailored delivery and a seamless user experience so that a family can present at a place and not need to know if they qualify for this or that and which programmes they can access. There should be a workforce there that can provide them that information. And this is all enabled by a single outcome framework, clear governance, shared accountability, innovation and learning mechanisms, usable data, and workforce efficiency. In the report, we also consider how the experience of families we spoke to may change under this blueprint. So please take a look to find out more about that. As Elspeth mentioned, encouragingly, these components that enjoy high levels of support from experts, many of which are in the room, are also highly consistent with the government's new published Better Start in Life strategy. So we hope that this alignment means the sector will rally behind ensuring the implementation of the strategy is effective. How we can think about this is this high-level blueprint can be read as an extra layer of detail on how to deliver the government's vision by drawing on evidence from science, experience, and context. So over the summer, we'll continue to work on expanding the detail of this blueprint, building on our existing projects and analysis at Nesta, with a view of publishing a more implementation-orientated version in the autumn. So quickly before I end, this project's thanks to the support and contribution of so many people, and I just quickly wanted to thank Ethos for funding and continuous partnership, On Our Radar for digital storytelling and the amazing film we just watched, Neighbourly Lab for all the ethnographic work and support in family workshops, and CCID also for the workshops. Thank you.
If you join me here, and then Ben and Janet, if you would like to come up as well. I think Ted will appear on the screen. Here he is. Welcome. We can see you. We can see you nice and clearly, Ted. What I'm going to do, in the interest of time, is I'm not going to introduce you. Partly because I think your reputation's probably precede you in this room, and we don't need too much of that because people know who you are. You're going to give 5 to 10 minutes of remarks. I am probably going to be a little bit tough on the 10-minute boundary on that. So please don't breach it, because I don't like to do that. I'm going to start with you, Ben, then go to Janet, and then go to Ted, and then we will have the opportunity to do Q&A. And are we okay on the camera? Are we okay if Ben stands at the lectern? Good. All right.
Not that I'm rushing. But I have a lot to say. Fantastic to see everyone here today. And it's great to be part of this, face-to-face, talking about the early years. It feels like a real moment, and I've got to try and talk a little bit slower, otherwise my excitement will carry me away, and, well, possibly you too. I'm Ben Lewing. I work for a new organisation called Making Evidence Work. There's a bit more detail in my bio, which you have. So that's that on that. We've heard already from Lucy, thank you, about the blueprint for delivering integrated family support, based on learnings, as Lucy said, from science, experience, and context. And there's a pretty resilient consensus. I guess this is a fairly warm audience, given that most of us have been involved in this already, but it is reassuring that there is such a degree of consensus about what an effective support system should look like and how we might organise services to enable this. It's already been said, but our most important challenge then is not what, because we have this consensus, but how. How can we sustain? How can we grow? How can we even reclaim effective support in the face of the challenging context which we see in 2025? And that's been well described. It's been well described in the new Best Start strategy. It's been well described in the New Era report. It feels very familiar. And if the message still hadn't got across, what an incredibly powerful video we've seen. Really distressing and motivating in equal measure. So what will it take to do the how for this strategy? I offer you two things. First of all, I'm going to talk about distributed leadership. And then I'm going to talk about real-world evidence. So distributed leadership, first of all, we've been calling for some national strategy, for some national vision. We have it now. It is here. Is it everything we want? No. Is it good enough? It's better than that. It is great. And you may disagree with me, but I think it's fantastic. It's not perfect. There's a lot more work to do, but it feels like it will really shove us forward. What we need now is leadership at every level to build the kind of infrastructure that we've just heard about, the infrastructure in a new era. So I'm going to run through what I think we need from 4 key sets of stakeholders, very briefly, of course. So from government, we need that national vision, and we need it to be a story which continues to feel live and current, a story that is told. We also need government to be investing in local capacity, and we need government to create the stability even when things get difficult politically. We can't keep having short-term initiatives, short-term funding, chopping and changing the latest new thing. That's not how we secure this amazing potential of Best Start. And we also need government to be removing the obstacles where national leadership is required to do the things which just don't work if you try and solve them at a local level. Let's face it, we've got lots of experience of trying to solve data sharing with local workarounds, or a range of other things, workforce planning, consistent measurement. All of these things need a national approach. Secondly, we need leadership from the impact economy, which is named explicitly in the Best Start strategy. We need them to play their part, to innovate and to insulate progress from political change, and to mobilize a wider community of stakeholders to really release new resources and capacities. It's a very exciting moment for what's called the impact economy. I think that's a force which feels like it's fresh and can really inject some energy into this agenda. Thirdly, we need leadership from local leaders, leaders of public services and communities, because we need them to attend to the key features of local systems that make them work, including how they are planned as well as how they're delivered. So we need them to be thinking and working on a good understanding of where they're starting from, population needs assessment, the public health view on this. We need them to be thinking about the local governance arrangements that Lucy was talking about. We need a particular emphasis on how families are engaged. We need them to be thinking about common approaches to coordinated working, to learning, and to measuring improvement. All of this needs a coherent local system and approach, really important. And then the fourth group that we need to play a leadership role here is families and communities themselves. This only works if it's an agenda which is owned by families and communities themselves. We have seen a litany of agendas which have felt done to. This can't be one of those because they just don't succeed. It has to feel like families are co-producing alongside public services the support that matters most to them and their children. How am I doing on time?
Great. You're 5 minutes and 32 seconds, so you've got ages.
Okay, you say that.
Well, it depends how much you've got to say, of course.
Right. Now, I was hoping to have a brief moment for a little bit of chair yoga just to wake you all up, but there isn't time, sorry. You just do it in your own time. So my second point, then, is the how of delivering effective family support depends on harnessing the power and potential of real-world evidence. And I'll say a little bit more about what I mean about that. But Lucy set this up perfectly by talking about context, experience, and science. Those are the three components which I'm describing when I talk about real-world evidence. And it's interesting because A New Era feels like it was designed explicitly around those different sources of knowledge with the ethnographic interviews, which we've heard so much about already, the widespread review of written evidence, including sources which might not be considered the most important if you're looking at things that have the most robust evidence, but actually tell us such an important story about journey and context and opinion and are crucial to our knowledge. And then building on sector expertise, so people who understand the local context, people who understand the national context, able to piece together the pieces of information and knowledge that we have. So all of them feel like they make A New Era a super strong consensual process and output, which certainly resonates with me. We know that we're going to need those three different kinds of evidence to make progress at the local level too, when it comes to putting Best Start into practice. So, personal reflection here, interested to see your thoughts. I get frustrated when I hear phrases, well, when I hear the phrase, the evidence practice gap used again and again. And I'll tell you why. Because it implies that the people working in local family support services don't understand evidence, are not motivated to act on evidence, that family support services are insufficiently evidence-based, and that local authorities and their partners are not making good decisions. And the next step from that is this idea that really they should just do what the evidence says. They should do what works, and they should get on with it and be told. And that frustrates me. The reason is because public services and community leaders are already using evidence in the real world every day of the week. How many of you have met a local leader who doesn't know anything about evidence, who hasn't come across evidence-based interventions, who isn't worried and concerned about how to reach families and really understand their experience? In the same way as we talk about digital natives, we should celebrate local leaders as evidence natives. They are constantly balancing different kinds of knowledge about lived and learned experience, data about population systems and resources in the local context, as well as learning from science on implementation, interventions, and child development. Do they always get it right? Of course not. Do they need help to combine these things in a stronger form? Most definitely they do. But criticizing them, even if it's not explicit, because they don't seem to understand the latest evidence, is not a way to build a coalition that mobilizes the people we need to own this. So the work that they are doing, it's tricky, it's complex, subtle, usually done with compromise and collaboration, and it depends on professional judgment and the quality of the infrastructure that's around them. We've got to help them build that infrastructure, but we don't want to design professional judgment out of this system. So I call on you to let's collectively challenge the deficit language here around evidence practice gap. Let's start from where communities are and where local system leaders are and help them to balance those different kinds of evidence that I talked about and use the rich breadth of evidence in a more powerful way. Very briefly, yes, the robust and painstaking work that will feel very familiar to many in this room, which is about building our understanding of the evidence underpinning specific interventions, or the science which allows us to understand child development and implementation science and so on. All of that is hugely important and must go on, but it is only part of the evidence story that we need to make Best Start happen. We have to strike this balance between the science, between what we know about family experience, and what we know from the local context. Okay, another challenge for you in my final 30 seconds. Actually, my view is I'm not into evidence hierarchies. You may have gathered that already. But if we are talking about first amongst equals, the evidence of experience should come top when it comes to evidence. The lived experience of babies, children, young people and families, and the learned experience of people working with them, who support them, are the most important kinds of evidence for ensuring that services are safe, inclusive, culturally relevant, accessible and joined up. And this is particularly important as a route for greater equity in support for minoritized families. So we've got to get this right. We need to give experiential evidence the value it deserves, both in the funding and the design of Best Start. Yes, I've seen. So, in conclusion then, he said, nervously shuffling his papers, we broadly know what we need to create. We've had some brilliant pieces of work which give us both a mandate and a direction of travel. And we know it's not a quick fix. We know it's going to be a journey. The Best Start strategy talks about these being the first steps in a decade of renewal. If we get the leadership and the evidence right, those two things which I've talked about, we will still be talking about Best Start in 20 years' time, rather than harking back to the things which many of us spent our careers on 20 years ago. We will be talking about how a broad coalition pulled together to make this happen despite the challenges facing us. That coalition is us, the people in this room and those online. We can do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Do you want to do it from there or do you want to do it from...
I'll go from here.
That's all right. Great. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Janet Grauberg, and I'm really delighted to be able to be here to talk to you all and give a few reflections on this thoughtful and thought-provoking publication. And I'm going to offer three perspectives that we might talk about in the room, but actually I'm also offering them to the Nesta team for thinking about that detailed policy blueprint. And they draw from my experience as a consultant, working mostly in the voluntary sector and on scaling good practice. So the three are the role of the voluntary and community sector in an integrated early years offer, the lens of race and racial discrimination, and some thoughts on implementation and scaling that really follow what Ben has just been talking about. So firstly, the voluntary and community sector. And I'm going to start by saying the government's commitment to developing and funding Best Start family hubs is hugely welcome. But we also know that one in every local authority area won't reach all those who could benefit. I live in Camden Borough, I live in West Hampstead. It's 3 buses to the other side of the borough, and that's one of the smallest boroughs in London. So there'll continue to be a role for philanthropic investment in what the report calls backbone organisations. Thrive at 5 already mentioned, Better Start, Save the Children communities. So what is the opportunity that we have here to strengthen and spread the role of the voluntary sector at a local system level? At a personal level, we've heard, unsurprisingly, that families really value consistent relationships and express concern about the gap between touch points. And the route into the envisaged early years core offer could so often be via a local grassroots organisation. That might be a playgroup or a food bank. It might be a PVI nursery, private, voluntary or independent sector nursery. How will the new offer build capacity for those routes to access those family services, childminders, all of the diverse early years landscape? And finally on this, a word of warning. The NCVO 2025 Road Ahead report describes 2025 as the year of the big squeeze for the voluntary sector. Higher staffing costs, higher utility bills, falling public donations as the cost of living crisis continues. If we're not careful, those grassroots organisations will wither away, a bit like the grass in the sunny weather. So, secondly, race and race discrimination. Simply, in 2023, 40% of babies in England and Wales were born to mothers with an ethnic minority background. In this age of DEI, I was slightly surprised to see not more discussion of this aspect in the report and in the Best Start document. The links between ethnicity and poverty are well known. The statistics on maternal mortality are stark. Black women almost 3 times as likely to die, Asian women almost twice as likely. The good news is that the EIF's report on family support for ethnic minorities and the questions in its Family Hub planning tool already offer us a way into these issues. So we talk about a no wrong door approach. So there are some questions about what are the different doors that those from an ethnic minority might reach us through as we build this new offer? And how do we make sure when we design these services that there's a racially and culturally sensitive welcome behind the door? These are questions both for the policy blueprint and I think for the local authorities' Best Start local plans when they come to write them. And then finally, some words on implementation and scaling. The last time I was on a platform with a Nesta speaker, it was to review the evidence on successful introduction of early language interventions, especially in the early years PVI sector, drawing on learning from a programme funded by the Sutton Trust. So I was really delighted to see requirement 5, we're going to get into this lingo, aren't we? Innovation and continuous learning capabilities. And I wholeheartedly agree with the statement, there's not enough focus on scaling and disseminating these new insights. Learning from the Sutton Trust work we did was that scaling and spreading doesn't happen on its own. It definitely needs an infrastructure, whether that's provided by government or other agencies, as well as an evidence base for effective interventions, as Ben's just talked about. There's also an evidence base for implementation and scaling to be drawn on, and there's useful learning in other sectors. The EEF Schools Guide to Implementation is an excellent piece of work, and I'm also involved in a wholly different sector, in a leaving care benchmarking forum run by the voluntary sector, which brings together leaving care team managers across local authorities in a mix of online and face-to-face peer learning opportunities. So there's as yet relatively little in the policy implications components section of the report on how a greater focus on scaling and implementation might work. So I'll conclude by wishing you all power to your elbow as you work on that and all the other aspects of the policy blueprint. Thank you, Janet.
Okay, I believe, yes, we have Ted online. So Ted, if you'd like to take us away for the final remarks, and then we'll go to the Q&A.
Okay. In my limited time, I'm going to focus on what do we have strong evidence for? Well, if we go back to the original Sure Start Children's Centres, established between 2000 and 2005, those children's centres offered health services, childcare, early education, and family support. Some of them offered more than that, but all of them offered at least that. They were all governed by one manager who had control of the staff working in all of those 4 types of service. This meant you had an integrated delivery of services through a one-stop shop model. The evidence for this type of centre, Sure Start Children, what I'll call a full-service children's centre, was originally found positive in reports to the DFE in 2007, and which was summarized in a Lancet report of 2008, which shows that these have clear benefits for children's development and parent practices. This was followed up by subsequent reports in later years, which basically reinforced the same message. Now, what happened in 2007 when these reports were first available to the government? Tony Blair saw these evidence and then insisted that a children's centre be set up in every community in the country. That led to 9,000 extra children's centres being established without the money to fund them. What this meant is that there were many centres which were renamed as children's centres, but we were not full-service children's centres. Now, later, the Institute of Fiscal Studies followed up the children born in children's centre areas. And they found that those children born so that they received the full service children's centre model in the centres established up to 2005 showed better health and education outcomes as teenagers. They did not find evidence that the later children's centres after 2007 had any benefits at all. So what that evidence tells us is if you have a full service children's centre delivering health, childcare, early education, and family support under one management system, so that one manager controls all of those services, that eliminates intersector rivalry, which is very damaging to service delivery. And all of those centres had parents on their management board. So they were able to integrate parent views into the running of those centres. Now, this evidence, I think, is very important for the later development of family hubs, Better Start and Best Start, to the extent that family hubs can reproduce the full service children's centre model as seen in the children's centres established up to 2005, then they're likely to be successful. To the extent they cannot deliver that one-stop shop model for an integrated service delivery, then they're much less likely to succeed in improving children's outcomes. I think this is very important because It gives us a clear guide to how to develop services and how to plan policy. But it's also information which is not currently held in the government departments running these services. So I would urge us to think about where we have strong evidence for improved children's outcomes and how a one-stop, full-service, children-centered model can be very successful. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. We've done so well. We've got loads of time for Q&A. I'm really, really pleased. I was a bit worried I was going to badly chair that. Thank you so much to everybody on the panel. That was really insightful, really good provocations. I think we've got a roaming mic in the room. So if you have a question, stick your hand up. If your question is directed at a particular person, please say who you're asking it to. Otherwise, I'll do a little bit of throwing it around. We've got someone over here with their hand up. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you for that. That was brilliant. My name is Mohammed Mishal. I run a delivery consultancy working with central government. The question is, we talk a lot about evidence here, and real-life implementation means there are trade-offs to be made. In the last talk, in the last piece, there was a lot of let's follow the kind of single bits of evidence. But what departments are really looking at are options, almost that kind of what's the minimum valuable product? At what point does it stop becoming useful to do this? At what point do you stop? Do you deliver the whole hog? And actually, most often, they're not able to deliver every element of the system as effectively to its fullest extent. So that conversation around evidence, I think there's also a piece about at which points that evidence starts to degrade, at which points it no longer becomes worth delivering it, because that's really what departments in the current financial context are really going to be focusing on. And that's where that delegation between national policy and local policy, local flex, starts to play a real role, because you get to set those boundaries for non-negotiables. Just thinking about, as you develop the blueprint, how do those almost non-negotiables, both at national policy level and local policy level, start to play into the conversation?
So, fantastic question, thank you. And I expect all of you have got something to say on it. Shall we, do you want to start with the blueprint piece and then maybe move it this way?
Sure. Yeah, two things come to mind. I think innovation being core to that. One thing is we might have evidence in one place, but we don't know if it can apply somewhere else. So allowing for that flex so that local areas can find out for themselves if it works is really important. The other thing that it made me think about is kind of like core components and things that you get increasingly in kind of RCT style evaluations is what elements need to be fixed and which can be more flexible. And you could perhaps apply that to other types of evidence so that governments can realise or work out what needs to stay and which bits can be adapted.
I was just going to say what Lucy has said. Something that, and you answered it yourself, isn't it? Actually, and I'm just thinking about the place that I'm from. It's very, Camden Borough is very different to Lewisham, say. Actually, the difficult bit is the balance between fixed and flexibility. And actually, just reflecting on that Sure Start experience that Ted has talked about, one of the strengths of it was these are the things that have to be in it, and that was also one of the weaknesses of it. So striking that balance, I think, is where the debate needs to be.
I mean, I thought it was a really good point rather than a question. I completely agree with you. I think underpinning this are some things, some ideas that we want to be true, but they don't hold water. We want evidence to be clear. We want it to be a thing that we can rely on. But we should talk about evidences. Lots of different kinds of ideas that we've tested and we've learnt from, and they don't always tell us the same thing. And the skill is making them work based on the knowledge that we have. And I think that's what you were describing, how you make decisions when you have imperfect information. I mean, it was really interesting hearing Ted speak. I don't know whether others are in this position too. I was the commissioner of children's centres around that time. The children's centres in the area where I worked were not like that. That was the theory. But they were all sorts of different shapes and sizes. So if we're trying to create this idea that we couldn't create before when we had all the money, what does that tell us? We need to have a balanced system where we're weighing up different kinds of evidence and we're using professional judgment at the national and the local level and just being clear about what our workings are. And I think the reports that we've got, particularly New Era, it helps us to be more explicit about what we think this model should be based on. But it's not a prescriptive list that everybody now needs to run off and do. There's a lot of work to do to figure out how to make this secure and stable.
More questions. Also, I'm going to trust you to let me know if there's online questions, Ruby.
Hi, and thank you, everyone. Connie Muttock, I'm from the Centre for Young Lives, and we've been really pleased to be involved in this research as it's been developing over the last 10 months or so. My question really was about Ted's provocation at the end there around scale, and it relates to the previous question, really. I guess I just wanted to hear the panel's reflections on the 500 million announced in the earlier strategy, what we might expect from DHSC to potentially match or at least meet that with similar scale. What, I guess, would you prioritise, A, thinking about Janet's points around how you replicate, how you scale up, but B, thinking about Ted's provocations around how you ensure quality and integrity of that service, given government's ambition of delivering 1,000 hubs by the end of 2028. So just interested in reflections on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Great question. Sounds like maybe you've got a hunch on it yourself. Ted, have we got you online? I wonder if we go to you first.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
I'm online.
We see you now. Would you like to give us a first answer?
So to which question?
So what do we think of the 500 million as a funding envelope, expecting some DHSC matching as well?
Well, 500 million sounds like a lot. But when you divide it up amongst all the different services to be delivered, it may not be enough. There are still some full-service children's centres operating, and those which are still operating are achieving excellent results. Some of them have documented those excellent results. What is interesting about the full-service children's centre model is that the actual costs of delivering health services, childcare, early education, and family support through an integrated one-stop shop model is only slightly greater than delivering those same services in a non-integrated manner, where each service is delivered by a separate agency. So I think the key to whether that 500 million works is to what extent it can be used to provide integrated cross-sector services for children and families in a one-stop shop model.
Thank you. I think we'll take another question, and then if anyone's got any reflections, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Connie's question. I mean, it's a sleight of hand from government, isn't it? We all see that, don't we? It's not enough money. We all know that, but we want this vision, and we want to find a way to make it work. And we're buying into the idea that it's not enough money now, but we want to have a 10-year strategy. We've been calling for this national direction for ages. We've been given it. It feels churlish to say, well, come on, you're not really serious about this because you're not putting enough money in. It will be incredibly difficult to get what we think is necessary, but this feels like it's the first step. I mean, am I wrong? Do people not feel that way?
You're exactly right.
I think we're all agreed, right words, wrong numbers, maybe. So let's take another question, and then if anybody else wants to chip in on that, as well while we're answering it, please do. I think we had hands over here.
Yes, I'd like to just say about children with special educational needs. I'm Hilary Kennedy from Video Interaction Guidance, but this question isn't anything to do with video interaction guidance. As an educational psychologist in Scotland, we had an integrated assessment system, so as soon as a child at 1 or 6 months is spotted, we immediately intervened. And we did assessment through intervention. And now we've got children, I know about a child in Lewisham at the moment, haven't been speaking at nursery and they're now school and they're still waiting for their assessment. We saw that mother, how goodness knows how she managed to fund an assessment. We should not be providing, diagnoses should not come with funds. This is such a mistake. We should be looking to see what children need and providing it for them immediately. We don't say that a baby has to wait for a year to go into special baby care if they're about to die. We see children who are desperately needing 1 year old an intervention. Their parents are desperately needing help and we're telling them to wait for a diagnosis. So I don't know how this can link into the integrated scheme, but it must do if we're to be humane, a humane society.
Totally agreed. Should we take another question and maybe reflect on that in the answer if people have thoughts?
Hi, Chris Cuthbert from UCL. Congratulations on a really important report and really valuable, a great piece of collaborative work. My question is about the role of universal health services. The film you showed really powerfully illustrated the importance of midwifery and health visiting. Sure Start evaluations have shown the importance of really deep engagement of health practitioners in the delivery of integrated services. How do we ensure that the health contribution is hardwired and this isn't just a DFE programme?
Great question, and I think links nicely into the comment that we heard before. Would either of you like to kick us off?
No, you do. Okay. I don't know anything about health visiting.
My reflections would be that I think it's a great question. I think it's hugely important to what we're trying to achieve here. And again, if I think back to what it looked like when I was commissioning children's centres, the funding that the local authority received paid for time from the health visiting service. So the local authority was purchasing health visiting to put in the children's centre. That wasn't hearts and minds integration services coming together. I don't know how common that was. Maybe it was an outlier. Others will have experience of that, I'm sure. There is something so important about join up between government departments to connect this agenda so that it feels that every step of the strategy and the ideas, they see health visiting, midwifery, family support, the wider infrastructure of support as part of the same system. And I don't think we've shown that before. We've had plenty of people who find workarounds, make it work, local areas that are outliers, but I think systemically we've not shown that yet. I'd love to see it. Chris, I'm sure you've got plenty of examples where you've seen it happen elsewhere in the world that we should draw on. I think we can do better, is what I'm saying.
I think that we need government at the highest level to take action on this. Because if we leave it to individual government departments, the rivalries and territorial claims of those independent departments will always prevent full integration of services. What you need is at the Prime Minister's level to enforce full integration across health, education, and social services, where we are delivering services for young children, in order for this to work on a national scale. Otherwise, we're relying on, as has been said, local area workarounds where a particular health trust and a particular education department managed to come together and reach agreement on how to integrate their services. Where this has happened, the success is very evident. So I think it's essential, particularly for disadvantaged families, to have full integration of health services with the childcare and early education and family support services, which are controlled by the local authority, in order to get a fully integrated service delivery model, which is by far the most effective model particularly for disadvantaged families.
I thought one quick point on kind of answers to both questions / comments, thinking about navigators and connector roles. Something we heard a lot about is kind of the expanding role of health visitors, having to do kind of a lot of what you expect from health visitors, but then also some additional work that potentially could be filled through other roles, such as parent champions and navigators. We heard this through families, and also the access point of early education potentially being another supportive way of kind of families being looped into the system earlier on and preventing them having to kind of wait as long.
So I'm just reflecting on the health visiting, the SEN questions, and I'm thinking as someone with very grey hair who's worked in government as a civil servant and as a special advisor, and have been a local elected councillor, and I feel like I've been here, that there's a limit to what integration, government integration, like you get to boiling the ocean because you want to throw everything in. And that makes me think about, so I've been round a loop as I've been sitting here about, like, I'm really depressed now because, you know, and then I thought, well, we need to come out of this somehow, and I'd just like to refer to the power of the Common Outcomes Framework, because, you know, I worked on the Every Child Matters framework when I was a civil servant, and this is the thing I'm proudest of in my career. And actually, the way to get people to work together is to have shared outcomes and shared visions. So I would say, let's focus on that, and then think about the enablers that enable the systems to come in together around that. So I'm just really pleased you had that in your report.
Well, I think it's 5 o'clock, so I think that is a fantastic and hopeful and constructive and practical note for us to end on. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. There will be drinks outside. Yeah, and thank you, everybody who worked on inputting into the report and producing it. Please go and mingle and meet people you haven't spoken to before.